Welcome into another edition of New Track Record Podcast. Caleb Hatch, Justin Kinney with you from the WELT studios in Fort Wayne here on a Friday as it is race weekend. August 16th as we record Friday morning. Race weekend for Gateway, the Bommarito Automotive Group 500 back on the oval. First off, though, hi, Justin.
Hello, Caleb. How are you?
Doing well.
Good. I told you this story as I came in. So we record at the library here in Fort Wayne, the main library, main branch downtown. And I parked in one of the parking lots, and it was a lot of people dressed in black. And we're right across the street from the convention center. I knew something was going on over there. I looked it up. It's the Indiana or maybe Fort Wayne Tattoo Convention today and tomorrow. Also tomorrow, at the Grand Wayne Center, is the Pastor Appreciation Celebration. So, pastors, you can swing by, be appreciated, and then get a tat, which you said you know some pastors.
Oh, yeah.
And me, growing up Catholic, immediately I think,
that's
priests,
not part of their...
Right? But then again, I've seen like the one of the priests at my son's school skateboarded. So he was always skateboarding in the parking lot when you went and picked up the kids. But anyway.
Wait, what?
Yeah, like he would be on the church side, he would be skateboarding, and then on the school side, everybody would be picking up their kids. So
he wearing like his?
He wear his
That's
frock
awesome.
and all that stuff. Yeah, and he was just skateboarding. So So if they had a tat, wouldn't surprise me. But it was an interesting combination coming up tomorrow at the Grand Wayne Center. So once I saw everybody, and I was like, all right, what's going on?
And even better, you're wearing all black.
I am wearing all black.
You're really fitting in.
I wasn't dressed in fishnets. I don't have tattoos, sleeves. I don't have any tattoos. I didn't blend in despite wearing black, but it's just a very interesting crowd heading into the Grand Wayne Center when I parked. But that's my update for the day. Now let's talk some IndyCar.
All right, on to the NTT IndyCar Series, and we had a busy week of news. As the Olympic break is finally over, we're back to racing. Several stories. The highlights, David Malukas to Foyt in a shocking move. Conor Daly will finish the season in for Agustin Canapino, the number 78 car at Juncos Hollinger Racing. Not really a surprise there after he tested for the team a few weeks ago at Gateway. And then Jack Harvey cleared. He'll be back with Coyne this weekend. Alexander Rossi, which we talked about last week, was cleared. And then Catherine Legge will be in the other Coyne car for this weekend. So we start, though, with the Foyt news, because that is, of course, the biggest story of the week. And, it was interesting. There was a Racer article that Marshall Pruitt had put together a few days before this announcement, and Malukas saying, we should have some news pretty soon. And then he said, I'm not going to Rahal. So you could cross that off the list. And then a couple days later, multi-year deal with Foyt, which I don't think any of us saw as a possibility on the drawing board.
Not at all, but I think it's twofold. First, the technical alliance with Penske, and then coupled with the season that Santino Ferrucci has had. How much impact has that alliance with Penske had on that? Only the insiders really know. I think it's a combination of Ferrucci's talent being in the right place at the right time with that alliance, but it has made AJ Foyt Racing as alluring as a seat in over a decade at least. And so while it is surprising, maybe it's not altogether shocking considering the season that AJ Foyt has had, and of course before the season started with that technical alliance. So now the question is, are we looking at a Malukas-Ferrucci tandem for next year? Are we looking at a Malukas Stingray Robb? Are we looking at a Malukas TBA? Who knows? But I think Malukas is going there to feel like he's the alpha. How does that affect the relationship with Santino Ferrucci, who is currently the alpha at AJ Foyt?
10th in points at the moment. 4 of the last 5 races are ovals. This is a chance for Ferrucci to possibly get a podium in this stretch. I think he could do some pretty impressive stuff.
I mean, qualify well at one of these ovals and stay out of trouble. You can
qualify well that's the key.
Yeah, I think we're going to be talking about that this time next week. About hopefully it's not Iowa, but I don't expect a banger Saturday night.
No, and I think the interesting part that you started with is the Penske alliance in all of this. David Malukas basically betting on himself and Foyt continuing that alliance, which I think all signs point to that continuing next season. In a way, is the Foyt team kind of become a de facto Penske like satellite or B team operation, because that's kind of what this feels like with this move, where Malukas is saying, hey, if I can show well next season in a Foyt car and kind of bide my time until there's a seat opening there, aka Will Power retiring, right? I mean, that's the only realistic possibility of a seat opening there. And I don't know how, when is that going to happen? Who knows? It could happen at the end of the season. It could happen 3 years from now. I don't think we have a clear timeline.
I think Will Power's having too much fun nowadays.
I would agree. I think after last year and just everything going on off the track with his wife and his family, that was a tough season. He's rebounded well and kind of back to the driver we expected him to be this season and competing for a championship. Go figure. So, but I think Malukas basically is betting on, hey, I could drive for Foyt for 1 to 3 seasons. It's a good ride as long as that Penske Alliance continues. They have great engineering with Michael Cannon there. And then, boom, I can swap into a Penske seat. I think that's what this has become with this ride. That's the positive in all of this.
Right.
I think the negative is, what does this mean for Santino Ferrucci, which is the kind of the second thing you brought up. And I would say this does not lend to good things. He had an interesting quote with his reaction to the news of David Malukas, and I think this says it all. Ferrucci said, "It's an incredible thing for the team. I think it shows where it's going. That's all I got to add."
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing too in how this is going to affect Santino Ferrucci is this is a fully paid spot for David Malukas. The Malukas family is not bringing anything to this equation, which is a big thing to understand because Santino Ferrucci doesn't bring much funding himself. So are we in a position to think that AJ Foyt Racing, with its financial difficulties over the last couple of years, has all of a sudden found enough backing to have 2 paid drivers for next year? Or is the importance now going to go on finding someone that brings a sizable budget for that second car? Because if that's the case, Ferrucci is SOL.
Yeah, and I guess that's the biggest thing is, has the Foyt marketing, partnerships, sales team, whatever you want to call it, have they found something to not only announce this entry, but bolster their team with a solid 2-car lineup? Because Malukas is essentially leaving a team that, yes, he's finishing the season at Meyer-Shank, but we thought, okay, if things continue to go well, he'll just stay there.
Right.
There's the added benefit of being a Honda driver, staying with a Honda team. He goes to Foyt, has to learn Chevy, and also with drivers switching, does this mean anything for the future of Honda? With Malukas leaving Honda, going to Chevy. Is this a nothing burger, or is there something there with that?
Well, I mean, we talked last week about the rumors that Andretti could be looking to switch to Chevy. Is this a get in front of things before they're officially going to be out kind of thing? Who knows? Could this really end up just being a swap? Could MSR now all of a sudden be interested in Santino Ferrucci for 2025? Just a lot of things to figure out, and there was already a lot to figure out in the silly season. This is just now an added one because we didn't expect this move. Like you mentioned, the way Malukas was performing and has been performing in his last several races with MSR, including that 6th place finish at Toronto, you felt like that was where his home was going to be if he finished the final 5 races of the season as well he's raced the previous 5. But now that's gone. And now we have questions on who's in that MSR seat and where Santino Ferrucci is next year.
Then you also have the leader circle implications for the 41. We didn't get a number as far as what car number that Malukas is going to drive. So that leads to more questions. Is he in the 14? Is he in the 41? Is it the slim chance they're going to run a 3rd car? I don't think so.
Right.
I don't think that's a possibility here, but those options are on the table. My guess would be he's in the 14.
When you mentioned the fact that this could more and more maybe be a de facto junior team to Penske, could you see a scenario where Miles Rowe in 2026 is a full-time driver for Foyt?
Yes. I mean, all signs point to him returning to lights next year.
Which he needs to do.
Yeah, which, again, he and Chadwick both could probably use another season, and if they can dominate that championship, as you pointed out before, that would be massive for that series, let alone the fact that all the races are going to be easily accessible on TV.
Correct.
As opposed to just on Peacock, and now every race is going to be televised. which is a huge change for that series. So
correct.
You look at the 41, and I always get confused by the leader circle because we know the 11 Chip Ganassi and the 4 Chip Ganassi aren't eligible for leader circle. So that takes out 2. So that would move the 41 from 24th to 22nd.
So it's on the
cut line,
along with the 20 of Carpenter. Is it what, 21st?
Yeah, would move up to 21st.
Number 20, yeah. So it is 5 points between that 41 and then the 78 of Juncos, of which will be Conor Daly's ride for the remainder of the season.
So that's the other factor in all this. I mean, to me, yeah, Ferrucci and Malukas as a team, that's an incredible pairing of young, talented, hungry drivers that want to prove themselves to get a true opportunity at a bigger team. I mean, Malukas unfortunately never got that actual opportunity at McLaren, but both those guys capable of winning races. We haven't seen them win yet, but you expect them to be strong. And you know, Malukas, I think the thing that's impressed me the most since he came back from the injuries, how he's qualified on road and street courses. It's not just, you know, he's kind of viewed as an oval guy like Ferrucci, but they both done so well, and especially Malukas in qualifying on those type of tracks.
Have done a really good job qualifying, really good job staying out of trouble. Sometimes that's luck, but sometimes, and you know, it takes a certain amount of skill too, because he's not putting a wheel wrong. So it's been very impressive what he's been able to do. AJ Foyt was impressed as well, and he'll be racing for Foyt in a full-time capacity next year. Who his teammate is or teammates, TBA.
So what do you think happens? I mean, to me personally, I think we're looking at Stingray Robb or someone else who brings a hefty check, especially if that car doesn't make leader circle, is in that second entry.
I still feel like it's Devlin DeFrancesco in that seat. It's unfortunate for Santino Ferrucci. I hope upon hope that he finds a place full-time elsewhere, partly because of the season he's had has been tremendous. And two, I think Santino Ferrucci in this series is good for the series. I like guys that are abrasive, that are going to piss people off. I mean, it brings drama. And he's a guy that maybe not as much as he used to, but he also says what's on his mind. He's not diplomatic all the time. And whether people like it or not is up to you. But I care to like. I like it, and hopefully he finds a home. He's definitely earned it. Who is willing to give him that chance? Is it MSR now, potentially? Who knows? We'll see.
I think, to me, the team that fits would be Rahal, because remember, he ran for them several years ago, kind of in an extra car fill-in role, ran well. They ended up choosing Jack Harvey over Ferrucci for the Hy-V car, and maybe they come back around and say, hey, he's available. Yeah. He's a really good driver. He's been good at Indianapolis. Maybe that can help us improve, you know, our oval performance as a team. I mean, he's become a top 10 to 12 driver in the series in a Foyt car.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I think I hope upon hope, when we talk about guys in this series that don't get fair shots, I love to call out people that say people don't have fair shots when they've had plenty of opportunities and they've not proven anything or not much. I think Santino Ferrucci has proven that he can be a full-time driver in this series and be an effective one, and hopefully he lands a ride.
Yes. To me, my best guess is Rahal, and then I would throw in, you know, could he go to Shank? You know, that's obviously another option on the table. But it's just, this is completely upended everything we thought in silly season.
And make no mistake, this is not something that just we got wrong. I mean, it came out of left field for a lot of people when this was announced.
Then, so we move on from the Ferrucci and David Malukas news regarding Foyt to Conor Daly, in a move that was no surprise. He will finish the season for Juncos Hollinger Racing in the 78. Augustine Canapino out. In fact, he's already announced that he's going to return to Turismo Carretera for the rest of this season, and already has a ride lined up for next year in Argentina. Again, this is all expected. He's, you know, one of the all-time greats in that series and in that country. So he will kind of go back, and yes, he says he's open to IndyCar opportunities, but he fears that, you know, that was it in terms of his opportunities in IndyCar, and probably true, but he did show himself well. There's just too much off-track stuff going on, as we detailed last week.
Yeah, and we said, you know, he's going to go back to Brazilian sports cars and whatever, and spend his remaining racing career majority doing that. So he had a nice stint and mixed results on track and off track. But Conor Daly now has that relationship with Juncos, obviously, from the road to Indy, and now steps in. Do you look at this as a tryout for Conor Daly, or is it just a filler for the final 5 races?
I feel like it's kind of both, right? It's a filler because they need someone who's reliable, who can get that car into the leader circle. If he gets that entry and it finishes in the leader circle, I think it certainly is not only a tryout, but I would say he becomes one of the top options, barring significant funding that the team needs, and I'll get to that in a second. I think he becomes that one of those top options they consider, because who knows? I mean, does Grosjean return next year to the team? He's had a good season, but that's something. I just feel like there are a lot more unknowns now than what we thought a couple weeks ago when we did our 2025 silly season predictions podcast. That's already been torn to shreds.
I still feel like Grosjean's back. I think he's been that one constant with this team, the one positive with this team, despite Grosjean being Grosjean at times. But you know what you're getting into when you're signing Romain Grosjean. You're going to have some blow-ups. You're going to have some attitude issues. But by and large, he's been a good, borderline, very good addition to Juncos Hollinger. I mean, 16th in points right now. You're definitely getting at least one driver in the leader's circle. If Conor Daly can perform well, you're going to get 2. And that's the goal right now for Juncos. I think there's more behind the scenes in terms of figuring out where this team is going between Ricardo Juncos and Brad Hollinger, and less in the front end in terms of Grosjean. I think Grosjean's back unless something happens with the split of this team, which I don't know is going to happen this year. But I think Grosjean's back, and could it be Conor Daly in this seat next year? Could it be a funded driver in terms of bringing money? We'll see. Conor Daly, we know, doesn't bring a fat check, but he knows he has a lot of experience in this series with every team except Penske and Ganassi, basically.
Yeah, literally, one of our listeners pointed out the 16th team he's driven for.
Which is just amazing. It's crazy. So, you go from Canapino, who, by all indications, took himself way too seriously. His fans took him way too seriously. To Conor Daly, who's a laid-back guy, kind of a goofball, can be serious when need be, but is just going to roll with the punches. And I think it's going to be a refreshing change for Juncos. We saw that with the test at, where was the test? Gateway? A couple weeks ago. And that kind of initially made us raise our eyebrow to wonder what was going on. And now he'll get the final 5 races for Juncos Hollinger. So I think it's a good change for Juncos. It's a good opportunity for Daly. What does it mean for him going into 2025? I don't know, because I feel like that second seat has to have significant funding come with it. But who knows? Conor Daly is like a cat, man, 9 lives, and he always seems to turn up. And I think largely he makes the most of his opportunity. He's never going to be a real consistent contender in this series, but he's going to be a steady presence who's going to give you a lot of feedback. He's going to handle himself on track and off track, and he's really very much a safe hire at this point for Juncos.
And I think the other thing is Gateway is one of his best tracks, as we mentioned before, and Canapino had started qualifying well on the oval. So was he 10th in one of the Iowa races? So this is an opportunity for that team to move even more forward in terms of their oval qualifying, which would be a huge step for them. I mean, Conor's capable of qualifying up front here and racing up front at Gateway this weekend. So this will be a fascinating thing to watch. And I talked about getting to the future of the team and everything. So Nathan Brown had this interesting tweet saying, just asked Ricardo Juncos about the speculation regarding the future of Juncos Hollinger and his ownership stake, as well as that of Brad Hollinger. Didn't say much due to non-disclosure agreements, but he did confirm, this is Juncos, the long-held rumor that talks have taken place with Devlin DeFrancesco's family. That says a lot.
Is it a race to hire Devlin DeFrancesco between Juncos and Foyt? Is that where we're at, you feel, right now? He's going to end up at one or the other.
Or coin, for that matter.
Yeah, but I think if you're picking competitive seats, I'm putting Foyt first Juncos second?
Yeah, and then Coin third.
Coin third, yeah.
I think we'll see him on the grid, but then again, we thought we'd see him on the grid this season, and the funding was seemingly cut in half from what it was from the Andretti days, which,
right.
I mean, would presume it went from like 10 or 12 million to 5 or 6 million.
But I maybe a year out of the sport has made that money go back up, maybe, thinking, hey, we got to reinvest in Devlin or he's not going to have an opportunity. I don't know. But even half of what he was bringing is still multi-millions, and it's going to be a big boost to whichever team he goes to.
For sure. And then the other bit of driver news, as we mentioned, Catherine Legge back in the number 51 for Dale Coyne Racing with Rick Ware Racing this weekend at Gateway. ELF, the sponsor once again, so that's good. And we presume she finishes the ovals this season. Jack Harvey will be in the 18 the rest of the season. Toby Sowery will run the 51 at Portland. So that's where we stand with the Coyne driver seat musical chairs going into Gateway. So with that's the silly season stuff. I mean, no one saw the Malukas to Foyt thing, and I guess the big thing we're waiting for is what's the car number, because that would lead us to a lot more conclusions, but we just don't have a lot of information yet beyond that it's a multi-year deal. He'll be a full-time driver at Foyt.
And that's the first, well, the latest piece of the silly season 2025 to fall. Maybe an unexpected piece. Plenty to decide. I think now with things ramping up back on at racetracks for the final stretch of the season, I think we'll start at least hearing more rumors and maybe even some concrete information coming maybe out of Gateway.
What did I say? We'll have a lot of news coming after Gateway.
We'll see.
We've already had more news than I would have expected prior to Gateway, so
I just hope we're not railing on the oval product next week, which I feel like is inevitable. But I mean, hopefully we have a surprise come Saturday. I don't want to say Saturday night because it's not a night race.
Yeah, it's a twilight race. Here's why I will remain hopeful. So the race starts at what, like 5:20 Central Time?
Right.
So local time. And then by the time they finish, I mean, we're looking at roughly 2 hours or so. So say 7:30 Central. I mean, there's not going to be a dramatic temperature drop, but you'll have temperatures dropping, so that will impact the racing. You'll have the sun going down, that will impact racing. So I think we'll see more of a change as opposed to a mid-afternoon race that we saw at Iowa, where it's just not going to change anything.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, the sunset for St. Louis is still 7:53, so technically the sun is still up for the entirety of the race.
But temps will be dropping.
Hopefully. Maybe. Potentially.
Yeah, well, I guess that's my one thing that I will say, hey, maybe this will help with the racing. So let's get to our 3 key stats from Chad 200. For Gateway, Joseph Newgarden, 4 wins and 8 starts, 582 laps led, 2 poles. Ed Carpenter, 20th or worse in 6 of 8 races, no laps led. He did have that dramatic second-place finish. What was that, 2019? 2018?
I can't remember.
It would have been, I think, 19 that he finished.
You're better
second.
on dates than me.
Because, let's see if I can, I want to say it's 2019, where Takuma Sato beat him at the line. And that's really kind of the last real hurrah. Yeah, that was 2019. Last real kind of hurrah, it feels like, for Carpenter on an oval. So we'll see if he can get some results. And then Pato O'Ward has finished 3rd, 2nd, 4th, 2nd, and 5 starts, led laps in every race, 159 total.
So he's been quite good at Gateway, to say the least.
We'll get to our picks in a second. The weekend schedule. So as we record today, practice will come for practice 1 not long after we post this episode, 12:45 to 1:45 Eastern. Qualifying, 4:20 to 5:20 Eastern. Again, all this Peacock, IndyCar Live, Sirius XM, IndyCar Radio. Then there's the night practice, 7:45 to 9:30 Eastern, Friday night. And then Saturday race day, 6 to 9 is the TV window, Eastern on USA and Peacock. Green flag between 6:20 and 6:30, I have seen.
Just a quick update because I did my due diligence.
Oh yeah,
on
they
whether
did update the Did they update the schedule too?
Did they? I don't know. Did they?
There was something about that. You checked the weather though.
Well, I did check the weather hourly. So it's supposed to be a high of 91 tomorrow in St. Louis. No chance of rain. I was hoping like maybe we'd have like an hour delay for track drying or something like that. At 6 o'clock tomorrow, it's going to be 87. At 8 o'clock, it's going to be 82. I don't know how much cooling we're going to have on the track, particularly if the sun isn't down. I mean, if the sun is out and beating down on the track, I just don't know how much. If we started this race at 7 o'clock and ended it at 9, that'd be a little bit different because you'd have a lot more cooling with the sun down. But I don't know the rhyme or reason. I don't know if there's any, and maybe this has been written somewhere. I don't understand why this is not a night race. Like, other than Texas, when's the last true night race that IndyCar had? Was it Gateway?
Iowa.
Well, Iowa. Was it all nighttime?
No.
That's what I'm saying.
It finished at nighttime.
Well, I know, but that's what I'm saying. Like, start at twilight, end at night. When's the last time we had that? Was it Gateway's third year?
It would have been 2022 because that one was rain delayed, and then it finished
it was not on purpose.
1 in the morning.
That's right. So it wasn't even purposeful. But I'm saying, like, you're on USA anyway. What's the problem with starting this race at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central? Maybe Gateway is like, here's the thing. We were talking about this before we started recording, this infatuation with making races a one day. Oh, it's an opportunity to just do all in one day, drive to St. Louis, drive home. That is a hell of a long day for people.
And it's still like a 4-hour drive from Indy, right?
Right. I just, is it they want to start earlier because they feel like, okay, if we can get done by 9 and people can get home by 1 or 2 in the morning? I don't understand. I for competition wise, and I think for fans, don't you want a night race? I don't know. I don't have the answers. Maybe somebody out there does. I just wonder why can't IndyCar have any true night races anymore? Iowa or Gateway. You need extenuating weather circumstances for it to happen, and I don't understand.
And we're not going to have it next season, right?
Correct. I understand.
No. One of the Iowa races, right? We don't know yet.
And I understand not having a Saturday night race at Iowa because then you come back Sunday afternoon. Like if you wreck a car, you don't have a lot of time to turn that around. I get it. But like a Sunday night race, I mean, I know it's tough to compare to NASCAR, but NASCAR had a night race at Richmond last Sunday. I'm sure plenty of people saw the final turn that I lost money on, but I digress. But I don't know. At least one true night race a year. Is that too much to ask, Caleb?
I would prefer to at least have 2 night races a year.
I mean, at this point when we have 0, I'll take 1.
Yeah. Here's the one thing I'll throw in here that is interesting. I was curious, where do the main grandstands fall in terms of direction?
Uh-huh.
And they are essentially western. They're a little tilted, a little bit, but behind them is the west, right? So the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. So does that kind of change the track, at least on the front straight?
So it would go down. You would have more shade earlier because it's going down behind the grandstands.
Correct.
I see what you're saying.
That's the one possibility to keep in mind. Maybe that plays a role.
Potentially.
With that said, what do we expect to happen?
And
don't forget, Alex Palou has a 9-place grid penalty for an engine change.
I'm going in pessimistic, hoping that any amount of action is exciting because I'm not expecting much. I hope it's better than Iowa. I hope it's a good crowd. I have concerns that it's going to be a bad crowd at Gateway. And I think we'll get back when we talk about the mailbag a little bit. I bring up something on Twitter that I know majority of people are against, but I'm playing devil's advocate. I have a case for the other side, but I don't know if it's going to be a good show tomorrow night. I hope it is. I hope there's a lot of people in the stands and it's a good race. But I also, in looking at what happened in Iowa and in looking at the available tickets still at Gateway, this could be a processional race in front of not a lot of people. That's what I fear.
Well, and the last oval race we had was one of the worst oval races I have ever seen.
And you had to watch 2 of them.
Yeah, at least the night one, Iowa one, had at least some intrigue.
Yeah, the Sunday one was just absolutely terrible.
It was awful. And that's hard to say. Like, that's hard to admit, but that's how bad it was.
So it makes you, okay, we have low expectations, which means it should be easy to exceed those expectations. But then again, who knows? I don't know. At the very least, I hope it's a good show for whoever is there. And I just don't know if there's going to be a lot of people there, unfortunately.
They at least have like a family 4-pack option. So, I mean, that's...
And that's another
helpful
thing, too. Like, starting it at 5:30 local, right? 5:30, 5:45. Like, you're pretty close to the heat of the day. Wouldn't you want it a couple hours later? People start getting there at 5. The race starts at 7:30, and it starts cooling down a little bit. And now you're getting people getting there at 3. There's not a lot around Gateway. Yes, it's in the shadow of St. Louis, but it's in a very industrial...
Oh, yeah. They'll have food trucks, and in terms of concession options, like that'll be taken care of, but there's nothing really around.
Yeah, there's nothing around. It's not like, hey, let's go to a restaurant and then walk around and then we're going to drive 5 minutes to the track. That's not how it works at Gateway. So that's another thing is like if you're Gateway, wouldn't you just be like, we need a night race because people aren't going to come here and spend multiple hours in the 90-degree heat before the race even starts and then sweat some more. But I digress. I'm not a promoter. I don't have all the answers. I have a lot of questions.
TV often sets the race times. That's the problem.
But it's USA. That's my thing. It's like, this is an NBC race. If it was NBC, I'd understand. But it's USA. I mean, it's bookended by repeats of Law and Order SVU and 911. I mean, what's going on?
You're not wrong. I'm just saying TV sets up the time slots often.
But hey,
that's
if
that's
those get
factor.
higher ratings, then it is what it is, right?
Yes.
Not saying they do. I'm just saying maybe they do. I don't know.
Who do you think wins?
You make a good case for not Alex Palou, but Pato O'Ward. I don't know. Is McLaren capable of getting 2 wins? Pato O'Ward. Can Colton Herta
3 wins?
Keep it going. Well, yes, 3 wins, I guess, backed into 1. In the end, I still feel like Penske owns the short oval package. I'm going to go a guy that has struggled mightily since his second Indianapolis 500 win. I'm going to go Joseph Newgarden, wins at Gateway.
That's a good pick. I'm going to go Will Power. I tend to agree with you, though, in terms of Penske dominating these type of events. The other thing we don't know, there are likely going to be more grid penalties for engines. So we know Palou has the 9th-place grid penalty. There will be several other drivers, and so we just don't know that full list yet as we record. So that'll be another factor to keep in mind, especially if it's tough to pass, which we expect it to be.
Right, and maybe that's an advantage for Palou is if a couple other of his championship contenders, of which right now I look at Power and Dixon as the only ones.
Yes.
If one or both of those also have to take a penalty, it kind of evens those things out.
I mean, Herta is 4 points behind Dixon, to be fair.
I just don't think he can have the consistency.
But yeah, he's going to have to win another race.
Yeah, maybe he can keep
2.
it going from Toronto.
What's weird about this season is that we haven't seen a driver go on like a hot streak, win like multiple races in a row. Like we saw Palou do that
3 in
last
a row.
year in like 3 out of 4. We saw Dixon in 2020 win the first 3 races. Pagenaud had a hot streak in his championship season, 2017. We haven't had that this season. So that's kept things, the door just open enough for people to be there. And is this the weekend that we get a dramatic shift? I don't think so.
Right.
I think Palou is just too consistent. And if he finishes top 10, then he's essentially protecting his position.
I'm just quickly scanning, to your point, the standings. The most consecutive podiums this year for any of the championship contenders is 2.
That's also hard to believe.
2 straight. That's it. I mean, Palou has had 2 straight. Power had 2 straight at Alabama and the Indy GP. Dixon had 2 straight at the 500 in Detroit. And then Herta has not had consecutive podiums. So, yeah, to your point, nobody has really gone on a hot streak so far with 5 races left.
Yeah, I think we'll see that change in terms of maybe not winning 3 in a row, but I think we'll see one of these drivers win at least 2 of the last 5 races. I really do.
most years you look at it and say, this guy started piling up podiums, not just wins, but podiums, and that's what was the difference in winning the championship. We really haven't had that yet.
Yet. That's the key phrase. If you agree or disagree with us, we'd love for you to interact with us. You can always find us at newtrackrecordpodcast.com. While you're there, sign up for the email list. It's free. You won't miss an episode or any special announcements. Also, you can check out the store. We have T-shirts and stickers there available for you. You can find us on social media, IndyCar Podcast, on Twitter/X, also on Instagram, on Facebook. Just search for New Track Record. You can also email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. Support us via Patreon, patreon.com/newtrackrecord. And as always, download and listen for free on your favorite podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Player FM, Overcast, Castbox, YouTube Music, wherever you find and download your podcasts and listen in for free. Mailbag time, and it's a busy mailbag this week. Over the course of the last week, a lot of good topics, a lot of good discussion points as well in the world of IndyCar. And we start with your whole kind of your point on the ovals and how it would work. And it's really just about, would fans welcome having a competition caution?
Which is, sacrilege. I understand. Even putting it out there is outrageous. I guess what I'm saying is, if you have 4 ovals left, 4 oval races left, if they're all going to be as bad as Iowa, and you have at least 2 that desperately need really good races, Gateway, which I don't know if it's the final year of their contract, but I think the best thing that would possibly come out of this weekend would be a contract extension of some sort with Gateway.
Well, I mean, they're back next year.
Correct, but I like a long-term thing, a 3-year extension, something like that, would be nice to see. And then Milwaukee. I mean, Milwaukee needs to hit big, and anything that can help those 2 events in particular would be of big importance. And I know people will push back. We had significant amount of people push back. Oh, it's gimmicky. I mean, let's be real. IndyCar has its gimmicks. It may not be as gimmicky as NASCAR, but it has its gimmicks. Okay, push to pass is a gimmick. The wave around is a gimmick. The keeping the pits open on instead of throwing a caution
massive gimmick.
Is a massive gimmick. Okay, so let's not fool ourselves here. I know that's crossing a line for a lot of people, but when you're looking at, we need to preserve every single oval on the schedule, helping those ovals in terms of a show should be of paramount importance.
So your poll question: would you be down for IndyCar to add competition cautions to help the show on ovals the rest of the season? 88% of respondents said no. Nearly 12%, just shy of 12%, said yes. And a lot of replies. Hickey93, friend of the podcast, said incorrect solution to the problem. Lynn_IndyCar says IndyCar is not NASCAR. Indy 500 is 500 miles. Not like the overtime rules of the WWE NASCAR. Heck no to competition cautions. Well, but that's not adding extra laps.
Correct.
So I guess that's like the one thing. We're not talking about adding an extra lap. We're not talking overtime. We're just talking like a stage break. And then Lynn adds, main issues they need to fix the oval package to make it competitive. That's up to Roger and company to spend the money to make it work, such as testing to find the right aero package and tire. Yes.
But in the short term, that's
short term,
impossible.
though, they're not going to get that done. OBX Jody said, my opinion on ovals, that if people would really give road and street courses a try and enter watching with an open mind, they would like those better than average ovals. Here's the thing. The fan experience at a road and street course weekend is better than that of an oval, with the exception, of course, of the Indy 500.
Correct. Because
of the spectacle and the pre-race and the tradition, all that. You go to Gateway and it's a night race or whatever. It's fun. It's exciting.
Right.
But
you just have the race.
Yeah.
That's it.
And the support series are often on the Friday night. So you have what they do pole night, and then they've had, I think, USAC like Silver Crown before. They'll have lights this year after. So, like, yeah, that makes it a 2-day event, but the race is the race. Like, that's it. You don't have a lot of build-up. You don't have, like, 5 support series racing in constant action all day, plus an infield, fan zone and midway and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so that's part of it.
Food trucks and beer gardens.
Now, Gateway has tried to replicate that in the past, and they've tried to do it at Milwaukee and other places, and it's been mixed results in terms of success, but having constant on-track action is how you're able to sell tickets to a road and street course event.
I mean, that's the thing, is like if you have a snoozer at Mid-Ohio, people are like, oh, it's still a fun weekend, blah, blah, we camped out, we sat
because there are race cars on track for 8-10 hours a day.
There's stuff going on all day, all weekend. You just get together with family, blah, 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 and it's just, at Ovals, that's it. I mean, we will have lights this weekend at Gateway.
But again, on Friday night.
Yeah, it's just like, this is it. Like, you just, your weekend or your fan experience is dictated more at Ovals by the race. That's why you need really good oval events. And right now, IndyCar is almost the complete opposite of that.
With the exception of Iowa, where it's an Indy, where it's Indy's obviously about tradition, the event, and the spectacle.
Correct.
Iowa's about the concerts.
Correct.
You just happen to have a race.
But I'm saying in terms of the product,
yes,
it is the opposite of exciting outside of the 500.
Several other replies. NKR said, I'm against crap like that most of the time. The on-track product is worse than the gimmick, though. Do whatever it takes to fix it. Well, I think Iowa Race 2 lends to that.
And that's kind of was exactly my point, was if the show is worse than the gimmick, then the gimmick is worth it.
Yes.
And you can't tell me Race 2 of Iowa was better than having competition cautions every 35, 40 laps and bunching the field up and having restarts. You cannot tell me that would not have been a better show than what we saw.
Because _race said absolutely not. Tommy the Tree 01 said hard pass. IndyCar doesn't have to become a NASCAR junior with gimmicks, which is a lot of people kind of have this opinion. And adds, I want the races to be as organic as possible. No Mickey Mouse rules to make it interesting, please. Let NASCAR be as illegitimate as they want. Elena Cat 99 says no, and please get rid of it in NASCAR too. 100% unnecessary. And then FitJ 1983 says, if it's between competition cautions and what happened at Iowa, I'll take competition cautions. The ad on double file restart stages and green white checkers, what happened at Iowa can never happen again. And that I guess that's the ultimate kind of argument in all of this. We can't have an Iowa Race 2 happen again. And tracks and promoters expect to be able to sell tickets, no problem.
If this was the days of CART and IRL, where you had solid ovals on the schedule, I'm not as urgent to make sure this changes ASAP or making some gimmicks to help the show. But you're in a precarious position with Iowa, with Gateway, with Milwaukee. Like these events have to succeed. You can't just keep losing ovals and then finding more to add. It doesn't work. So that's why maybe I'm a little bit more open to an idea of that, is you have to hold on to these ovals because there aren't very many. There aren't any, as far as we know, right now that are clamoring for IndyCar that are already on the schedule.
Moving forward, you posted when's IndyCar going to schedule a real night race at an oval.
Talked about that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. A few responses here. Indy Oreo said when it makes business sense for the TV network. Yeah, that's unfortunately the reality.
Well, true. I mean, it's a good point, but I kind of counter, like, it's on USA, though.
It's not on NBC.
Yeah. I get it next year not being able to do it.
Yes. But, Ben Smith for real says, what, you got something against happy hour racing?
Happy hour now legal.
Yeah.
In Indiana again.
Bauer Racing, it will certainly be an international race dominated by a third manufacturer. Well done. And Historic Hot Laps said when Texas returns, so probably not anytime soon, unfortunately.
Sadly.
Yeah, that's probably the reality. Now, who's going to be in the other full-time Foyt entry, assuming they run two cars? 80% of you said Santino Ferrucci. 16% said Stingray Robb. And about 4% of you said other, which I find interesting. I get that people want to see Ferrucci in the seat, but is that the reality? Jeremy from HBG saying, funniest option, Dave to the 14, Robb in the 51, Plo goes to F1, Santino to Ganassi. Santino finishes 2025 in third. Herta finishes 11th. Lynn _ IndyCar saying Ferrucci going to Ray Hall in the 45. That's my best guess. OBX Jody said Devlin DiFrancesco a possibility at Foyt. Yeah, keep him in mind. Hunter's Way 67 should be Santucci, but most likely Robb. Matt Imbury said, sorry to disappoint, but Ferrucci's in trouble here. Henry Malukas is not funding his son's ride this time, so unless Santino finds a huge injection of cash, he's likely on the unemployment line. And you had talked about that too. I mean, this is not HMD Trucking providing funding for a Foyt entry.
Correct.
And then M. Vanny, off the wall, said Armstrong, also a wild guess, but Armstrong does bring some funding, and he could be one of several odd men out at Ganassi. That's
an interesting point. It makes sense. Will it happen? Who knows? But I think it's a good potential landing spot for Marcus Armstrong if he does indeed get cut by Chip Ganassi.
Well, again, a lot of people want to see Malukas and Santino, but posting the news and people's initial reactions. So Lynn _IndyCar saying, if the rumors of Meyer Shank Racing switching to Chip Ganassi Racing for their technical alliance, you got to wonder why David would make the switch to AJ Foyt Racing. Well, Penske. Penske alliance.
Penske and, quite frankly, Ferrucci's performance.
And Indy 500 performance. Now, he says CGR has a better track record over Penske finishing the season better. I don't disagree in terms of winning championships, but in terms of the biggest race of the season, you want to be aligned with Penske.
If you look at a potential, and we're not saying this is likely, I think I don't say long shot, but unlikely that it's a Malukas and Ferrucci. What's the last time that AJ Foyt had two drivers of that caliber in the same season? I mean, nothing immediately comes to mind.
No.
I mean,
they didn't have two cars for the longest time.
That's true. Because I was thinking, did Vitor Meira ever have a good teammate? But I don't know if he was ever part of the team with two full-time cars.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, you had Kanan with Laced.
Yeah,
that was not. I'm just saying, looking at options, you had.
I mean, Daly and Munoz.
Yeah, Daly and Munoz. I guess is probably
comparable.
You had Sato and Hawksworth, and then tags and an extra car for the Indy races.
I mean, Bourdais never had a good teammate.
It's a
Dalton Kellett, I think.
Great question. I mean, you go back to 2014 when Foyt ran, an extra car just for a couple of races. 2015 is the first year we saw two full-time entries in a long time at Foyt. So, yeah, I would guess Daly and Munoz is probably the best 1-2 punch they've had.
Unless there's a big influx of money coming, and that'd be great if it happened. I hope it happens, because I think that'd be as solid of a lineup as Foyt has had in a long, long time.
No doubt. And then moving on in the mailbag. So Richmond, speaking of IndyCar possibilities, you mentioned Richmond and NASCAR. A lot of interesting comments from Denny Hamlin, basically implying that the Richmond second Cup date would go away. Is that an opportunity for IndyCar? Now, granted, NASCAR owns the track, so people rightfully pointing out if fans aren't going to the NASCAR race, not sure I would feel good about IndyCar's chances. That from NK Harden. Also, if it already struggles with attendance, not the best idea. That from Mallard _73. AJ Abate _ said there's a better chance of Palou landing the Audi F1 seat. Yeah, there's a rumor of Palou going to Audi F1 next year, which I would say is bogus.
Probably.
Kojo 617. Let's see how these next few ovals go before we get carried away with anyone signing up to pay that sanctioning fee to IndyCar. Great point.
Yeah, very true. And I think, too, is having two Cup dates makes you more fiscally set than just having one Cup date. So I guess I would look at it and say Richmond would probably be more interested in having IndyCar as a third date with two Cup dates in terms of money. But man, I'd like to see it, particularly with the recent interest that Richmond has had in the last couple of years before that dried up around COVID. That crowd at Richmond for last week was not good.
It was bad.
It was bad.
It was very bad.
It was very, very bad. So I just don't know. But that is an oval on the East Coast that we've kind of thrown out there that has been interested in the past in hosting IndyCar. Could that effectively change their opinion? Even if it's IndyCar saying, "Hey, we'll promote it. We'll rent out have some sort of financial deal. And
look, IndyCar needs a race in that region anyway.
Absolutely.
East Coast kind of region, and I get that. I mean, Richmond, you think more southeast, but they need something in that region. This from Indy Rocks 23, the last thing I want to read on this, a lot of good responses on this. I went to every Richmond IndyCar race. The first few were really good, but then the last few had very little passing, were sort of snooze fest throughout them all. However, it seemed like most people attending the race were there through a free ticket from Philip Morris, and that's the biggest thing.
Well, you could say that about a lot of tracks in the heyday, right? But I think, too, it's a market that IndyCar continues to need to address. We've thrown out Rockingham, the revamped Rockingham, as a potential site for an East Coast oval. If Richmond is just having one race weekend a year for NASCAR, does it look at needing another date or wanting another date, particularly if IndyCar is going to handle some of the financials? I hope so.
Couple other nuggets to get to before we move on to the not the mailbag, news and notes, getting mixed up on where we're at. So motor racing was an Olympic sport, the 1900 Summer Olympics. That from Autosport Lab.
Really?
Sent us the Wikipedia. So that's fascinating. And then someone else asking about run_mark_run. Any idea why Octane Press doesn't have audiobooks? I like their stuff, but it takes me a while to sit down and actually read one of their books. I don't know.
Very good question.
I would contact them about that. But yeah, motorsports, motor racing in the Winter Olympics.
In the winter?
Or excuse me, Summer Olympics, 1900.
I'm looking it up right now. That's pretty wild that they had it.
Now, they were generally not classified as official. Okay. The IOC's never decided which events were Olympic and which were not.
Gotcha. Huh. Interesting.
So they had two-seater cars with different weight limits.
Okay.
And a lot of French drivers. French and Italian drivers.
I would imagine. The 1900 Olympics were in Paris.
Yes.
By the way, so that would make sense with a lot of European drivers.
But I found that to be very interesting.
You know who won the most medals at the 1900 Olympics?
France?
I don't know. I'm looking it up.
I do not know.
They won 102.
Wow.
Second was the United States with 48.
That's domination.
The mixed team was, I guess, individuals from nations that they collectively had 19.
So kind of like what today is the refugee.
Yeah, I guess so.
Team.
Or instead of Bolivia sending 3 athletes, they just go with the mixed team, apparently. But, okay, that's enough Olympics talk. Sorry.
All right, moving on to news and notes. And we mentioned Alex Palou and that Audi rumor. I'm going to read this word for word from Nathan Brown because I think it's hilarious.
Okay.
Alex Palou holds an F1 out clause in his new 3-year Ganassi deal, including a buyout one source said is $1.5 million. But the IndyCar title leader claims rumors of a possible Sauber/Audi jump are, quote, fake. He also understands it's tough to believe him.
That's the key aspect of that tweet.
Yes.
That was good stuff.
Yes.
Look, $1.5 million is not a lot of money.
A lot for IndyCar in a buyout, but nothing for F1.
Look, if Sauber or Audi or whoever looked at Alex Palou as a viable F1 hire, I would not blame Alex Palou whatsoever to jump to Formula One, especially if he wins a 3rd championship. He can always come back, and probably a couple years of sucking with Sauber, who is bad anyway, he'll probably be back. You only have one opportunity to go and race in Formula One, unless you're Daniel Ricciardo, who gets 8 million chances. But point being, if he has an opportunity to go to Formula One, he needs to take it. If that's a dream of his, of which I don't know why it wouldn't be.
Kevin Magnussen says IndyCar, among other options, on the table for 2025 if he can't get an F1 seat. That from an F1 article. I'll believe it when I see it, when he's actually racing over here. Also, Liberty Media, in an earnings call, acknowledged the DOJ, Department of Justice, investigating the company over antitrust violations for refusing Andretti Global's entry into F1. Liberty says not against expansion, will cooperate fully with the DOJ. That from Jenna Fryer, the AP. Also, Liberty under DOJ investigation over Live Nation, which handles a lot of concert ticketing, which that's been an ongoing thing. If you're in the U.S. or have attended concerts in the U.S.,
right.
Ticketmaster and Live Nation are the same company, and it's a whole separate mess. NBC confirming Lee Diffie will make a shift to the NASCAR on NBC booth August 24th for the Cup race at Daytona. He will not be part of IndyCar the rest of the season. That per Nathan Brown, that's expected.
Which we knew. Going back real quick to K-Mag, do you think there's a scenario? I mean, you give me a percentage chance of this happening, because he has that relationship with Chip Ganassi Racing. MSR partners with Chip Ganassi Racing. K-Mag decides he wants to come to IndyCar. Chip Ganassi has that relationship with K-Mag, have the relationship with MSR. K-Mag drives for MSR next year.
Liberty Media is a part owner of MSR.
Percentage chance of that happening?
5%.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility, but it would be, it is a remote possibility.
Yes. Good news, Wolfgang Monschur, the I Have Two Questions reporter, as a lot of people know him as. He had suffered a stroke, expected to be home from the hospital within the next week or so. This post was from August 8th, so it's down to about a week. Marshall Pruitt originally said 10 to 14 days at the time, so very good news there on his health recovery. Also, Nolan Siegel's strategist/engineer Robert Gue left the team to explore other options. This from Nathan Brown. Brian Campy, who was the engineer strategist for Kyle Larson's Indy 500 debut, will take over.
Was Campy with Montoya for a while?
I think so.
Okay. Because he was with Penske.
Yes.
Right?
I believe he was with Montoya when Montoya came back to IndyCar. So, and we have the grid penalties. And so we already know about Alex Palou getting the 9-place grid penalty.
Yeah.
So unapproved engine changes for Palou, also for Scott Dixon, also for Catherine Legg, and also for Felix Rosenquist.
So advantage willpower.
Advantage Chevy, too.
Yeah, well, in terms of championship contenders, because you have to have Dixon make that drop as well. So qualifying will be interesting later today because of those penalties.
Absolutely. And that helps Pato O'Ward, that helps Colton Herta, obviously willpower.
Right.
As well. I mean, it just basically helps those guys in particular in terms of the championship fight.
I mean, you qualify well and stay out of trouble. There's no reason why you couldn't possibly get a podium on Saturday night with the lack of passing we anticipate.
Tweets of the week. One tweet this week out. You had posted, is there anyone you're rooting for to not finish in leader circle? I don't know why people are rooting against.
Well, my thing is everybody's always commenting on they hope this driver or this team finishes in the leader circle. I'm like, well, not everybody can make it. So my thing was, is there anybody out there that's actively rooting against a team or driver to make the leader circle?
And this reply was hilarious from 500 Indy 1911. Marco Andretti, who is, of course, not a full-time driver.
No, he's
very funny.
He's not going to make it.
No, he will not.
He's not going to make the leader circle. So, that was pretty funny.
All right, time for our random split air driver of the week.
All right, we're going to kart in the late 90s. This is a guy that raced for several years in kart that some people may not be familiar with. Andre Ribeiro.
Oh, yes. Very good.
In 1995 through 1998. The late Andre Ribeiro, which I did not know he passed away in 2021. But he's a guy that got involved in karting. He's a native of Brazil. You know, the real heyday of Brazilian influx in American open wheel that really started in what would you say, mid-90s, really.
Yeah. I'm looking at the 99 kart season. There are more Brazilians, I think, than Americans. It's wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's
like half the grid.
It's wild. So he broke into, he did some Formula 3, and he raced in 1994 for Indy Lights with Tasman Motorsports, and then he made the jump into kart with Tasman Motorsports beginning in 1995 and raced through 3 seasons with Tasman, then raced for Penske in 1998. It was not a good year for Penske in 1998, as we all know, but he did have 3 wins over the course of his kart career. He won at New Hampshire in 1995. He then picked up wins in his home country of Brazil in 1996, as well as Michigan in 1996. He in the Lola Honda in 96. And then did Tasman Motorsports 97, then the Penske in the Mercedes in 1998. His best finish that year was 7th at Vancouver. But after that, he was out in terms of the Indianapolis 500 performances for Mr. Ribeiro. He finished 18th at the 95 Indianapolis 500. And then was 4th at your favorite race, the 1996 US 500. I think maybe he was just one of 4 drivers left race at the end of that race. I joke, but there wasn't very many. 1998, he remained in kart, moved to Team Penske with their struggles. After 1998, he received an offer to work with Roger Penske in South America, running over 15 car dealerships in Sao Paulo.
Did he take him up on that?
He did.
Smart man.
He actually ran dealerships in Brazil for Roger Penske following his racing career. He did some Formula Renault in Brazil and some stuff like that, but really 1998 was the last in terms of major auto racing for Andre Ribeiro. He actually, unfortunately, passed away in May of 2021 of colorectal cancer at age 55. But for his career, 69 races run over 4 years in Champ Car, 3 wins, 4 podiums, a pair of poles as well. His last race was the 1998 Marlboro 500 in California.
At Fontana, R.I.P. to Fontana as well.
Yes, indeed. And so that is your random split era driver of the week this week, his full name, Andre Ribeiro da Cunha Pereira, a native of Sao Paulo. This week's random split era driver of the week.
All right, we'll be back next week to recap the Bommarito Automotive Group 500, the racetrack formerly known as Gateway. For Justin Kinney, I am Caleb Hatch. This has been New Track Record Podcast.